We all look at our environments, especially these days, we'll find the turmoil coming from the economic arena. Let's talk about global economic meltdown. It talks about difficulties coming to life for people. People who lose their jobs, people who have a difficult time making their end meet, people who might have been doing very well see downturns too. And the turmoil is what makes life difficult for most people. Why? Because most of us feel we're alone. We feel we have to deal with this in our own way. And we feel that the support is not there for us to lead our lives calmly and peacefully. As we realize that we're alone, then we start to put in our own efforts to solve whatever difficulties we're faced with. It is not only in these times or in this part of the world that difficulties have come. When we look back at history, there have been difficult times which have been coming into the life of many, many people. And even though when it happens to us, it seems to be most important, we learn from history. We look back and we find that difficult times came, but they went away. So these 4 words, this too shall pass, are very important for us to focus on. Times which are good and times which are difficult are intermingled in our lives. We all have times where things will be very happy, we'll be joyous, we'll be physically well, emotionally we'll be doing well, our relationships will be good, financially we'll be in good shapes, and then there'll be times when there'll be difficulties. Either a difficulty in the physical body, or a difficulty in a relationship, or a downturn in the finances, or things that are not emotionally well are bound to happen in life. The saints tell us that our true existence is not at the level of the body, but our true existence is at the level of our soul. And that soul is transmigrating from one existence to another. And that soul is a part of God. It's conscious, it's full of the love and light of God. And when it experiences its oneness with God, it's fearless. Most difficulties come into life because we fear. We fear what will happen tomorrow. We fear what is going to happen with me. We fear how our children are going to do in their exams. We fear if in our old age, someone will take care of us. Fear comes into us because we feel separated from God. But once we have the realization that we are one with God, God who created the creation, God under whose will everything runs, God who's the protector, who's the supporter, who's the lover, who's the one who puts us in a state of joy and bliss. When we know that we are with God, then all fear evaporates. But we are human beings, and as human beings, we find it difficult to connect with God because we only connect with those that we experience at the level of our physical senses. Our sense of sight, our sense of hearing, our sense of smell, our sense of taste, and the sense of touch are the 5 senses through which we operate. And through these senses, we interact with others in this world. And that's what we think is reality. That what we think is why we are here. And as we start to understand ourselves, our existence, the realization that there's much more beyond what we can understand starts to set in. We think about God in many different ways. Some think about God as an older, wise person. Others think of God as being a power. Some think of God, they see them in the prophets, in the founders of their faiths. And what is very interesting is, when we read the scriptures, and we can read any one of our scriptures, whether they come from the east or the west, we all realize that God is unlimited. We can't put a frame around God. We can't limit God, because God, the Creator, is every place and in each and every one of us. And that realization only comes in as we experience God. As we live at the level of our outer senses, we only interact with other living forms, whether they be human beings, animals, birds, fish, reptiles, or any other living form. And that's what we take to be reality. Saints tell us that there are regions beyond this physical region, regions that we can enter, regions which are full of the love and light of God, regions which can be accessed by each and every one of us. And in the writings of the saints, we hear so much about the spiritual journey. And so the journey within is a journey of love, and this is why all the scriptures of the world say those who love are the ones who find God. Those who love God with all they have, with a passion, with a zeal, are the ones who will get to their goals. Now, how do you love someone that you don't see? Generally, we go, we see a scenery, we say, boy, I love this, because it's very becoming to our eyes. We see another human being, we like them, we say, we love someone. We see an object that we like, we fall in love with that object, because we're living at these levels of our senses, of physical senses. So how do you love someone that you don't see? Can God be seen? Can God be heard? Can we experience God? The saints tell us definitely yes. They all had a communion with Lord. They all saw God. They all could hear God. They all were one with God. Whether they sat in silence under the bo tree like Lord Buddha, whether they sat in silence in a cave, whether they sat in silence in a hut, it was in silencing the world outside that the experience of God happened. And whether we call that meditation or we call it praying with attention, we call it concentration, going within, these are different names given to similar techniques. If you think about a conversation, most people meet each other, and as you meet, you converse. And many times when you're conversing, and if there's a group of people, a lot of people are conversing. And so what generally is happening? Someone is talking in a conversation and someone is listening. Now, one who's talking is the one who's giving information out. They're talking about whatever they know, whatever they think is right, and so they could try to put their point across very strongly and talk and talk and talk and talk. Who's gaining in the process? Not the one who's talking. But the one who's talking is just talking out whatever they think is correct. They're not getting any more information. But the one who's listening is the one who gains. And so, praying, we all pray. Pray is talking to God. So what do we pray for? We say, God, I have an exam next week, let me pass it. I'm not getting married, let me get a good spouse. The stock market is going down, let my stocks do well. My children, let them do well in school. My parents are not well, let them get well. And so we're always talking to God. And what is meditation? It's like listening to God, like sitting in silence, because the voice of the Lord is within each and every one of us. Whether we call that the holy word, whether they call it the Shabd, whether they call it the Kalma, whether they call it the light and sound of God, whether they call it Jyoti and Shruti or the celestial music, this creative power which brought all creation into being is within each and every one of us. And we can connect with it. As we live today and we read about the writings of the saints and mystics, we wonder if only the saints are the ones who can have these experiences. But as Sant Rajinder Singh Ji Maharaj would often say, he said, what one man can do, so can another. So we all have a birthright to know God. We're all children of God. Ek pita, ek iske Embarking. There's one spiritual Father, we're all children of God. That we all have a birthright to know God. And those who take their attention and focus it within themselves are the ones who find God. And this human body, which has been called the roof and crown of all creation, has been given to us to know God. In this human body, we have a faculty which in the East is called Vivek. Vivek means we can discriminate between truth and untruth. So God has given us that gift. Now God has given us that gift, we need to make use of that gift. And if you get sick and you go see a doctor and they give you some medicine, but you come home and you put it in the cupboard and never take the medicine, you never get well. So God has been very gracious and has provided us with this existence. We need to make use of these faculties which have been given to us. But we generally in this world are so focused in the world, we don't think about God. There's a very interesting example about a young girl. Her parents were both working, and so when she was done from school, she would go to her grandmother's house. And the grandmother would take care of her for 3 or 4 hours before the parents would pick her up in the evening. So one day, one of her friends asked her, says, what do you do when you're with your grandmother? So she said, I do my homework. My grandmother's very nice and she takes good care of me. She feeds me. And so her friend was curious. She said, what does your grandmother do? She says, she's all the time reading the scriptures. Because, she helps me and then she's always reading the scriptures. So the young girl, her friend asked her, he said, why do you think she's reading the scriptures? So this young girl says, I think she's cramming for her final exam. We all think that we'll know God when we get old. We think this is for people when they're retired, they have nothing else to do, because we are so busy. We have to make a living, we have to buy a house, we have to do this, we have to do that, we have to establish ourselves in this world, and say, knowing God, this is when we retire with a lot of time. Little do we realize that time is ticking away very, very quickly. We all have a limited time, 50 years, 60 years, 80 years, 100 years, maybe 120 years, the technology is going up. And if our life started, time is ticking away and it's getting close to the time when we leave. And we all know that the more time we have, the more we can gain in any arena. Wherever we put our attention, that's what we become. If you want to become a doctor, you have to spend many, many years going to med school. If you want to become an engineer, you have to spend many years going to engineering school. If you want to be an accountant, you have to do a lot of work to excel in that arena. And it's the same thing with any other trade. If you want to be a plumber or an electrician, you have to have many years of training and then you become an expert in those things. Unfortunately, we in this world, when things are going well, don't think about God. We think, I did it. But when things are wrong, then we start to think about God. And many times when things are not working well for us, we blame God for why things are not working in our life. We feel God is very busy, He's taking care of those people, but not us. Why are we going through problems? So many times there could be a silver lining to the difficulty, because we might be the most intelligent person. We only know a lot about whatever we've gained in this world, and we might know a lot about one area. We're very unfamiliar about other areas, whereas God the Creator is all-knowing, and what is best for us is sometimes unknown to us. But when there is a desire to be with God, when there's a passion to be with God, then God definitely, through one manner or another, helps us. And this is why so much emphasis is laid on being in a state where we revere God, where we have love for God, where we have a passion to know God. But how's that going to happen? In most people's life, it happens when there's a calamity. If you are not feeling well and the doctor tells you when you go there, you have cancer, you have only 6 months to live, then you try to be very careful as to how do you spend those last few months of your life. Otherwise, life is just passing us by and we don't focus on what is important. And the saints and mystics say the earlier we focus on the realities of who we are, the better chances of getting to our goals. And so meditation is a means of being focused within. Meditation is a means by which we still the body and still the mind. Our mind, which is a lover of enjoyment, our mind which doesn't want us to know God, our mind which keeps us entangled in the activities of the world through desires, is going to send one desire after another. And so we need to be in a state where we can still the mind. Now, stilling the body is not difficult. We find a quiet place, we sit down to meditate, we can still the body. Stilling the mind is very, very difficult, and this is where Simran comes into play. When we repeat God's name, then we are going to be happy and joyous. Why? Because when we repeat God's name, when we do it mentally, then our mind is occupied in that repetition. It doesn't send any thoughts to us. And when in the stillness of the body and in the stillness of the mind, when no thoughts are coming, in the darkness in front of us, light sprout forth. And as we connect with the light, we are bathed in that spiritual energy. And as we connect with the divine light and sound of God, we then have a transformation that happens in our life. There's an interesting story about a cave. There was a cave, it was under the ground. It never seen light. It was always lived in darkness because under the ground there's all darkness. And so one day, slowly it comes outside. Comes outside, it sees beautiful trees, it sees light. It's enchanted. It had never seen that. It's very, very happy. All day long, when the sun is out there, it's seeing everything. And as the sun is setting, it tells the sun, it says, I'm very happy to meet you. You made my day. I mean, you made me see the light, and I can see so many things, and I'm so happy. I've never seen this before. He says, you should come visit me too, and I'll show you the darkness. The sun says, I've never seen darkness, so I'd love to come and see it. And so a few days later, the sun goes in. It's trying to go in the ground and gets to the cave. He says, yeah, I'm here, show me the darkness. But there's no darkness anymore. Because wherever the sun is, there's light. And as we connect with that light within, all darkness dispels. It's not that we learn something new. It's not that we are hearing something. It's the connection with the divine light within which makes a transformation happen in us. And all of a sudden, the realization that there is something beyond the physical sets in. When no one's taking a torch and putting in our eyes, you realize that there is something more to life than what we experience through our physical senses. And as we are in that state, from inside, we get peaceful, we get calm, we get happy, we get joyous. We're in ecstasy. And so we want to be in that state. And those who meditate realize that even when we are done with the meditation, that state lingers on and on and on with us. And this is why when we meet with those people who meditate a lot, there's a calmness, there's a stillness, which not only affects them, it starts to affect the environment. Because transformed individuals are going to be transforming families. And as the family gets transformed, there'll be transforming communities. And if the communities get transformed and are more peaceful, then they'll be transforming the countries and then the globe. So each of us can make a difference. Many times we just feel, there are 6 billion people in the world, what can I do? But each and every one of us can make a difference. These big lights, most probably would be incandescent lights. They would develop, electricity was developed by Thomas Edison. It was in Philadelphia. And when he developed electricity, they said he wanted to come up with light so that the roads could be lit up. But even though he developed it, he didn't know how to do that. So what he came up was very brilliant. He took a lamp and put it right on the porch of his house, right on the porch right by the roadway. And so when people would walk by, they would see light in that area. So then his neighbor put one, and his neighbor put one, and that's how street lighting came into being. Each and every one of us can make a difference. We just need to realize that God has given us the gift to make a difference. When we focus our energies towards God, when we get peaceful and calm, we will definitely make the whole environment well. But that will only happen if we realize that we're a part of God. If we only keep on living our lives at the level of our physical senses, then all that will think of ourselves as would be the human body. Then all of our energies go into keeping the body fit and fine, into taking care of the body, and all of our life is spent in that direction. All our lives we think we are the human body. We don't realize that we are soul, we are spirit, we are conscious beings, we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. We always think of meditation, say we are physical beings, we want to have a spiritual experience. But we in reality are spiritual beings. We are soul, we are conscious, we are full of the love and light of God. But we don't experience that because all our life we think we are the body. And so saints and mystics say, experience the real self. You can do that just like you have openings in the body, like the eyes, the ears, the nose, and the tongue, and then so many senses in the body through the feeling touch. You operate through them. You also have here what is called the single or the third eye, the Shiv Netra, the Dasmadha, the seat of the soul, the Nukta Safeda, different names to an opening which is not opening in the world outside. This opening opens into the spiritual regions beyond. And so the saints say, concentrate there. You have what I call your sensory currents through which your attention is going out into the world outside. Like through these eyes, whatever looks beautiful to us, that's the direction we want to go to. Through the ears, whatever sounds good to us, whether Beethoven music or Ravi Shankar sitar or rock and roll or soul music, whatever sounds good to us, we want to hear that more and more and more. Through the nose, we want to be closer to those objects which bring sweet smells to us. Through our tongue, we want to taste those food which taste good to us. And through our sense of touch, we want to always embrace those things which are soft and cuddly to us. And so through these senses, we're just interacting in the world outside, and they're taking our attention, which is the outer expression of our soul, and putting into the world outside. For us to experience God, we need to bring our attention within. This is why we find a quiet place to sit down to meditate. We sit by ourselves. As the plate is quiet, there's no sound, so sense of hearing is withdrawn. As we sit down to meditate, we make sure no part of our body touches someone else, so that if they move, we won't be distracted. So a sense of touch is withdrawn. We're definitely not going to eat as we meditate, so a sense of taste is withdrawn. We don't change the atmosphere. We feel God created this whole world. Every place is holy. So there's no need to light incenses or agarbattis and things like that. So our sense of smell is withdrawn easily. And then we close our eyes and withdraw a sense of sight. So by just finding a quiet place to sit down and close our eyes, we could be any place. We can withdraw all of 5 senses. What is difficult is as soon as we withdraw our senses, our mind sends thoughts to us. And this is where Simran comes into play, or repeating God's name comes into play. As soon as we close our eyes, we start to repeat God's name mentally. Not out loud, because if it will be loud, our ears would hear it. So if we do a mental repetition, then our mind is occupied in that repetition, and it is unable to send thoughts to us. And it's in that state, where the body is stilled and the mind is stilled, that we start to experience light within. In the darkness, light spouts forth. It could come as circles of light, it could come lights that are coming and going, flashes of lights, and the light could be of different colors. It could be golden, it could be white, it could be red, blue, green, yellow, orange, something else. Whatever we see, our attention should be right in the middle, and then with time, the light stabilize. So what actually is happening? The light of God is within each and every one of you. In the beginning, our concentration is not really that good. So when we concentrate, we experience the light. When we are distracted, we experience darkness. But with time and practice, as we sit regularly, our concentration improves, and then we are able to see the lights at all times. And then we go beyond the lights, and we experience skies and stars, in a moon, in a sun, and many, many other vistas within. The experience of being with the light is such that it puts us in a state of peace and calm. On the inside, when we are peaceful, we can deal with every difficulty on the outside. The path of Santmat doesn't ask us to renunciate life. It doesn't say that we need to lead our life and go into the mountains or the banks of the river to meditate. It says we have our responsibilities to our family, to our communities, to our societies, and global responsibilities. And while we pass through life, let us take some time daily and focus towards our spiritual growth. We live in a world of turmoil. There will be times where physically we won't be well. There'll be time when financially things would be difficult. There'll be time when our relationships would not be well. But in all of that turmoil, we can find the peace within, because the haven is within ourselves. It's not on the outside. Those who are able to go within can partake of the peacefulness and the states of joy and bliss which are within each and every one of us. And then as our attention goes within, then they're oblivious to their surroundings. And when they come out of that state stays with them for long periods of time. Based on a karmic burden or load, ups and downs in life will happen. But when we find the stability within, then we can deal with anything that comes in our direction. And as we sit together and as we experience the love of the Lord, we'll find that life will get more peaceful and calmer. And so it's my prayer to God Almighty to help each and every one of us experience the divine power within ourselves. And as we experience that, I'm sure that within ourselves, a passion to be with that power would get intensified. And with God's grace, we will be pulled towards God. We came into this world to realize ourselves truly, to know that we're not the body, we're not the mind, we're not the intellect. In reality, we are soul. That's what self-realization is all about. And once we realize that we are soul, then we want to also have the experience to be one with God, the one who sent us here, so that the separation is gone. And so when we sincerely cry out to God, we definitely find God. It's my prayer to God that each and every one of us can attain those states in this life, so that the very purpose for which we came into this world, which is to know ourselves and to know God, would be fulfilled.